The morning sun painted the sky purple over the human research station on planet Kepler 442b. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stood by the large window in his lab, watching the strange alien grass wave in the gentle breeze. 3 years had passed since humans first built this station on the distant world. Now 200 people called this place home. The planet was beautiful in ways Earth could never be. Purple grass covered rolling hills. Crystal trees grew in perfect circles. Flying creatures that looked like jellyfish floated through the air, glowing softly in the morning light. The colonists had learned to love this strange new world. Dr. Kim worked as the head scientist studying alien life. Every day brought new discoveries. Just last week, his team found tiny spider-like creatures that built homes from living crystal. The week before that, they discovered fish in the nearby lake that could change colors like rainbows. Down the hall, from his lab, 8-year-old Park So-min sat at a small table in the family quarters. Her mother, Dr. Park Hye-jin, worked at the communication center talking to other human colonies across the galaxy. So-min loved living on this alien world. While her mother worked, she spent her days drawing pictures of all the amazing creatures they found. Her crayon box was her most treasured possession. Inside were 48 different colors, including some that glowed in the dark. So-min had drawn hundreds of pictures since arriving on the planet. She drew the floating jellyfish, creatures with their long, graceful tentacles. She drew the crystal spiders building their shiny homes. She drew the peaceful plant-eating animals that moved in large groups across the purple fields. The grown-ups always smiled when they saw her drawings. They said she had a special way of seeing the alien creatures, where the scientists saw strange and different life forms. So-min saw friends waiting to be discovered. That morning started like any other. Dr. Kim checked his instruments while drinking his morning coffee. The scanners showed normal readings from all around the station. The weather was clear. The local animals were moving in their usual patterns. Everything seemed peaceful. Lee Dong-woo, the station's security chief, made his daily rounds. He was a former soldier who kept everyone safe. His job was usually boring on this quiet world. The most dangerous thing they had found so far was a plant that made people sneeze. Dr. Park Hye-jin sat at her desk, sending messages to Earth. The communication signals took years to travel between worlds, but it was important to keep in touch with home. She was writing about So-min's progress in school when the first alarm sounded. The sound was soft at first, just a gentle beeping from the long-range scanners. Dr. Kim looked at his instruments with curiosity rather than worry. The scanners showed something large moving through the northern forest about 50 kilometers away. Probably just a herd of those big grass eaters, Dr. Kim said to his assistant. They had seen large animals before. The planet had creatures as big as earth elephants that ate nothing but plants. But as the minutes passed, the readings became strange. Whatever was moving out there was bigger than anything they had seen before. Much bigger. The scanner showed it was at least 50 meters long and moving in a way that seemed almost intelligent. Lee Dong-woo received the first radio call from Survey Team 3 at noon. The team had gone out that morning to study some interesting rock formations in the northern hills. The radio crackled with static and the voices sounded frightened. "Base, this is Team 3. We need immediate evacuation. There's something out here. Something big." The radio went quiet. Lee tried calling back, but got no answer. He sent Survey Team 5 to look for their missing colleagues. 2 hours later, only one member of Team 5 made it back to the station. Her name was Dr. Yang Mi-young, and she was a geologist who had worked on the planet for 2 years. She had never looked scared before, but now her hands shook as she tried to explain what she had seen. "It was like a giant snake," she told the emergency meeting. "But not like any snake from Earth. This thing was as wide as a truck and longer than our biggest transport ship. Its skin looked like metal, but it moved like a living thing." Dr. Kim listened carefully to her report. As a scientist, he knew that fear could make people see things that were not real. But Dr. Yang was trained to observe carefully. If she said she saw a 50-meter snake, then something very unusual was happening. "Did it attack you?" Lee Dong-woo asked. "Not exactly," Dr. Yang replied. "It seemed to be studying us, like it was learning how we moved and what we did. When we tried to run, it would appear in front of us, blocking our path. When we tried to hide, it would find us somehow. It was like it could think. Commander Cho Sung-min, the station's leader, made the decision to bring all outside teams back to the station immediately. Within hours, everyone was safely inside the protective walls. But the safety did not last long. As evening approached, the long-range scanners showed the creature moving closer to the station. It was no longer in the northern forest. Now it was only 10 kilometers away and coming straight toward them. So-min sat by her bedroom window, drawing a picture of what she imagined the creature might look like. Her mother had told her about the giant snake, but So-min was not afraid. In her mind, all creatures were friends waiting to be understood. She used her green crayons to draw a long, curving body. She added yellow for the eyes and blue for the parts that might be pretty. In her drawing, the creature looked sad rather than scary. Why would it be sad? She asked her mother. Dr. Park Hee-jin sat down beside her daughter. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe it's lost. Lost creatures are usually scared, So-min said wisely. And scared creatures sometimes act mean when they're really just lonely. Outside, the sun set behind the purple hills. The adults prepared for whatever was coming, checking their defenses and planning escape routes. But 8-year-old So-min just kept drawing, adding more colors to her picture of the sad, lonely creature that was moving through the darkness toward their home. None of them knew that their lives were about to change forever. The thing approaching their station was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. It was intelligent, powerful, and completely alien. But most importantly, it was the last of its kind in the entire universe. The terror was about to begin, but so was the greatest discovery in human history. The attack came at dawn, just as the purple sun began to rise over the alien landscape. Commander Cho Sung-min was drinking his morning coffee when the ground beneath the station began to shake. At first, he thought it might be an earthquake. Then the outer wall exploded inward. A massive serpentine head pushed through the hole in the reinforced barrier. The creature's eyes were each the size of a grown person, glowing with an intelligence that made everyone who saw them feel cold inside. Its scales looked like black metal, reflecting the emergency lights that now flashed red throughout the station. The emergency alarms screamed through every corridor. People ran in all directions, grabbing their children and heading for the safe rooms deeper in the station. Dr. Park Hye-jin scooped up So-min and her crayon box, running toward the inner sanctuary where families were supposed to gather during emergencies. Lee Dong-woo shouted orders to his security team, but their weapons seemed laughably small against the enormous creature. The thing they were calling the Annaconda moved with impossible grace for something so large. Its body coiled around the outer buildings, and concrete walls cracked like eggshells under the pressure. Dr. Kim Tae-ho watched the attack through the security cameras from his emergency command post. What he saw made his scientific mind race with terrible possibilities. The creature was not just attacking randomly. It was testing their defenses in a systematic way, like a general studying an enemy fortress. First, the Annaconda tried to break through the eastern wall. When the automated defense systems activated, shooting streams of electricity at the creature, it pulled back and studied the weapons. Then it tried the western wall, moving in a different pattern that avoided the electrical defenses. It's learning, Dr. Kim said to Commander Cho over the radio. Every time we use a defense, it figures out how to get around it. The creature's massive body wrapped around the communications tower, crushing the metal structure like paper. Sparks flew as the equipment failed, cutting off their ability to call for help from other human colonies. In the safe room, 37 people huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. Children cried while their parents tried to comfort them. The walls were thick and strong, but everyone could hear the sounds of destruction coming from above. So-min sat quietly with her back against the wall, her crayon box open beside her. While the other children were scared, she seemed strangely calm. She had taken out a large piece of paper and was adding more details to her drawing of the creature. Her mother watched her with amazement. "Aren't you frightened, sweetheart?" "Little," So-min admitted. But I keep thinking about what it must feel like to be so big and have everyone run away from you. Dr. Yang Mi-young, who had survived the first encounter with the creature, shook her head. That thing is a killer. It destroyed both survey teams without mercy. But So-min looked up from her drawing with her large, dark eyes. Did it eat them? Hee-yam? Question surprised everyone. Dr. Yang thought for a moment. Actually, no. We found most of the bodies. They were hurt, but not eaten. Then maybe it wasn't hunting for food, So-min said simply, returning to her artwork. Above them, the Annaconda continued its methodical assault on the station. Lee Dong-woo's security team tried everything they could think of. They fired energy weapons at the creature, but its metallic scales deflected the beams. They released chemical gas designed to drive away dangerous animals, but the Annaconda seemed unaffected. Most frightening of all, the creature appeared to be learning from each failed defense. When they tried to trap it with electrified nets, it found ways to avoid them. When they used sonic weapons that hurt the ears of every living thing on the planet, the Annaconda adapted within minutes and kept attacking. Dr. Kim studied the creature's behavior patterns through what remained of their sensor network. The Annaconda was incredibly intelligent, perhaps more intelligent than humans, but there was something else in its actions, something that puzzled the scientist. The creature could have killed everyone in the station within the first hour of its attack. Its size and strength were overwhelming, but instead, it seemed to be toying with them, taking its time almost as if it was enjoying the process. It's playing with us, Commander Cho said grimly during one of their emergency meetings, like a cat playing with mice. But Dr. Kim was not so sure. There was a pattern to the creature's behavior that suggested something more complex than simple cruelty. The Annaconda would attack, then pause. It would destroy part of the station, then wait, as if expecting some kind of response. In the safe room, So-min showed her drawing to Dr. Park Hye-jin. The little girl had drawn the Annaconda surrounded by smaller creatures that looked similar to it. In the picture, the big creature looked sad, and the smaller ones were gone, leaving empty spaces around it. Why did you draw it like that? Her mother asked. Because that's how it feels inside, So-min explained. When you're the only one left, you get angry because you're sad. Dr. Park Hye-jin looked at her daughter's drawing more carefully. Could an 8-year-old child understand something that the adults were missing? The possibility seemed impossible, but So-min had always been good at understanding the feelings of the alien creatures they encountered. Outside the safe room, the destruction continued. The Annaconda had now wrapped its enormous body completely around the station's main structure. Slowly, like its Earth namesake, it began to squeeze. The metal walls groaned under the pressure. Emergency power failed in several sections. The air recycling system started to malfunction. It was clear that their sanctuary would not protect them much longer. Lee Dong-woo made the difficult decision to prepare for evacuation to the planet's surface. It would be dangerous, but staying in the collapsing station would be certain death. As the adults planned their desperate escape, So-min continued working on her drawing. She added more colors to the Annaconda's scales, making them beautiful instead of frightening. She drew stars in the sky above it, and flowers growing around its massive coils. What if it doesn't want to hurt us? She asked her mother quietly. What if it just wants to talk but doesn't know how? Dr. Park Hye-jin looked at her daughter's innocent face and felt a strange hope growing in her heart. Maybe, just maybe, the answer to their survival lay not in weapons or escape plans but in understanding what the creature really wanted. The Annaconda's massive eye appeared at one of the safe room's small windows, staring directly at them through the reinforced glass. For a moment, predator and prey looked at each other across an impossible gulf of understanding. Then the creature pulled back, and the real terror began. Inside the cramped safe room, panic filled the air like smoke. Dr. Kim Tae-ho sat hunched over his portable computer, reviewing every piece of data they had collected about the creature. His hands shook as he typed, trying to find some weakness they could use against the Annaconda before it broke through their final defenses. Lee Dong-woo counted their remaining weapons for the third time. 6 energy pistols with half-charged batteries. 2 sonic disruptors that had already proven useless, a handful of emergency flares. Against a 50-meter intelligent serpent with armor-like scales, their arsenal seemed pathetic. Commander Cho Sung-min studied the building plans on his tablet, looking for escape routes that the creature might not expect. But every tunnel, every maintenance shaft, every emergency exit could easily become a trap if the Annaconda was waiting for them. The walls around them groaned and creaked as the massive creature continued to tighten its grip on the station. Dust fell from the ceiling with each pulse of pressure. The emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows that made everyone jump at their own reflections. In the corner of the safe room, away from the desperate planning of the adults, So-min sat cross-legged on the floor with her drawing spread out in front of her, while the other children huddled close to their parents, crying softly or staring at the walls with wide, frightened eyes. So-min worked calmly with her crayons. Her picture had grown more detailed since the attack began. The Annaconda in her drawing was still enormous, but it no longer looked like the terrifying monster the adults described. Instead, So-min had drawn it with gentle curves and soft colors that made it seem almost friendly. Around the great serpent, she had added many smaller creatures. Some looked like tiny versions of the Annaconda itself. Others were strange alien animals that seemed to be playing rather than running away. All of them had smiling faces drawn in simple crayon strokes. Dr. Park Hee-jin noticed that her daughter seemed unusually calm compared to the other children. She knelt down beside So-min, grateful for a moment away from the fear that dominated the rest of the room. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. So-min looked up with bright eyes that showed no trace of fear. "I'm drawing how things should be," she said simply. "The big snake isn't mean. It's just sad because it's all alone." Her mother studied the picture more carefully. In So-min's colorful world, the Annaconda was surrounded by what looked like a family of similar creatures. But many of the smaller serpents were drawn with faded colors, as if they were disappearing or had already gone away. "Why do you think it's alone?" Dr. Park Hee-jin asked. So-min pointed to the empty spaces in her drawing where the faded creatures used to be. "Because all its friends and family went away. When you're the only one left, you get scared. And when you're scared, sometimes you act mean even when you don't want to." Commander Cho Sung-min overheard the conversation and walked over to look at the drawing. His first thought was that the child was too young to understand the danger they were all in. But something about the picture made him pause. "So-min," he said gently, "the creature outside has hurt people. It destroyed our station. How can you think it's just sad?" The 8-year-old considered this seriously, as if she were an adult discussing an important problem. "When my pet fish died back on Earth, I was really sad. And when I got sad, I got angry too. I threw my toys and yelled at everyone. But I didn't really want to hurt anybody. I just didn't know how to make the sad feeling go away." Dr. Kim Tae-ho had been listening while reviewing his data. Something about So-min's innocent words made him look at his research with new eyes. He pulled up the analysis of the planet's ecosystem that his team had completed over the past 3 years. The data showed evidence of a major catastrophe that had happened recently in geological terms, perhaps only a few thousand years ago. Meteor impacts had scarred the northern continent. Radiation signatures suggested some kind of stellar event had affected the planet's climate. Many native species showed signs of recent population collapse. "Oh my God," Dr. Kim whispered as the pieces began to fit together in his mind. "What if it's not a predator at all?" The other adults turned to look at him. In the dim emergency lighting, his face showed a mixture of excitement and terror as he realized what So-min's childish drawing might actually represent. "Look at this data," he said, showing his tablet to Commander Cho. "The planet suffered a mass extinction event recently. Most of the large animal species we've cataloged are either extinct or nearly extinct. What if the Annaconda is not hunting us? What if it's looking for others of its own kind?" Lee Dong-woo shook his head. "That's impossible. The thing is clearly aggressive. It destroyed 2 survey teams." "But did it eat them?" Dr. Kim asked, echoing So-min's earlier question. "Did it consume them for food, or did it just investigate them and then leave the bodies behind?" Dr. Yang Mi-young, who had survived the first encounter, thought carefully about what she had witnessed. Actually, you might be right. It seemed more curious than hungry, like it was trying to figure out what we were. So-min looked up from her drawing and smiled. It was looking for its family, she said with the certainty that only children possess. But we don't look like its family, so it got confused and scared. Dr. Park Hae-jin examined her daughter's artwork once more. The child had drawn the anaconda, with several smaller serpent-like creatures that looked like they could be its offspring or mates. But in the picture, these other creatures were fading away, drawn in lighter and lighter colors, until some were barely visible. "Sweetheart," she asked carefully, "how do you know it had a family?" So-min pointed to the creature's eyes in her drawing. She had colored them with blue and green crayons, but had added small drops of water coming from them. "Because it has the same look that Daddy had when Grandma died. It's crying inside, but nobody can see the tears." The adults looked at each other with growing amazement. Could this 8-year-old child have understood something about the alien creature that their scientific instruments and military training had missed completely? Above them, the station's metal framework continued to groan under the Anaconda's massive coils. But now, instead of the sound of impending doom, some of them began to hear it differently. Maybe it was not the sound of a predator preparing to strike. Maybe it was the sound of a lost and lonely creature, trying desperately to find someone who could understand its pain. So Min put down her crayons and looked directly at Dr. Kim. "Uncle, do you think we could help it find its family?" The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything they thought they knew about their situation. Outside, the creature that had terrorized them for hours continued its patient siege. But inside the safe room, a small girl's innocent wisdom was beginning to change how they saw their alien visitor. The real question was whether they would have time to act on this new understanding before the Anaconda's grief and frustration destroyed them all. Dr. Kim Tae-ho's hands moved quickly across his tablet as he pulled up every piece of data they had collected about the planet. So-min's innocent words had sparked an idea that could change everything. If the child was right, if the Anaconda was truly searching for its lost family, then their entire approach to the situation had been wrong from the beginning. "Look at this," he said to Commander Cho, showing him a series of geological scans. "These impact craters in the northern continent are recent, maybe 5,000 years old, which is nothing in geological time. Something big hit this planet, and it hit hard." Commander Cho studied the data with growing interest. The crater patterns suggested multiple meteor strikes over a short period, the kind of bombardment that could wipe out entire species in a matter of years. Dr. Park Hae-jin watched her daughter add more details to her drawing. So-min was now coloring what looked like stars falling from the sky, with the large anaconda trying to protect smaller creatures beneath its coils. The image was both beautiful and heartbreaking. "The radiation signatures support it too," Dr. Kim continued, pulling up more files. "There was a gamma ray burst from a nearby star about the same time as the meteor impacts. The combination would have been devastating to most life forms on the planet." Lee Dong-woo remained skeptical. "Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that the thing is dangerous. It's already killed dozens of our people." "But has it really killed them intentionally?" Dr. Kim asked. "Think about it. If you were a 50-meter serpent trying to communicate with creatures the size of mice, how would you do it without accidentally hurting them?" So-min looked up from her drawing. "Like when I try to pet the crystal spiders," she said helpfully. "Sometimes I'm too gentle and they run away. Sometimes I'm not gentle enough and I scare them. It's hard to know how much is just right." The adults paused at her simple comparison. The child had a point that their sophisticated minds had missed. What seemed like deliberate aggression might simply be the clumsy attempts of a massive creature trying to interact with much smaller beings. Dr. Yang Mi-young nodded slowly. "When I encountered it in the field, it did seem to be trying to examine us rather than attack us. It kept moving us around like it was testing how we would react. And the way it's been attacking the station," Commander Cho added with growing understanding. "It's been systematic. Almost like it's trying to get our attention rather than just destroy us." Dr. Kim pulled up the audio recordings from their external sensors. "Listen to this," he said, playing back the sounds the Annaconda had been making during its assault on the station. At first, the low-frequency rumbles sounded like threat displays or expressions of anger. But when he adjusted the playback settings and filtered out the background noise, something else emerged. The sounds had patterns, complex, repeating patterns, that rose and fell like music or speech. "It's trying to communicate," Dr. Park Hyejin whispered. "All this time it's been trying to talk to us." So-min set down her crayons and listened to the strange sounds coming from the tablet. To the adults, the filtered audio was still alien and difficult to understand, but the child's face lit up with recognition. "It sounds sad," she said simply, "like when people cry but try not to make noise so nobody will hear them." Dr. Kim ran the audio through the station's communication analysis software, the same programs they used to decode signals from other human colonies. The results were startling. The Annaconda's calls showed linguistic complexity comparable to human speech patterns. "This is a language," he announced to the group, "a sophisticated language. It's been trying to communicate with us from the very beginning." The implications hit everyone at once. They had been treating first contact with an intelligent alien species as a monster attack. Instead of trying to communicate, they had only fought back with weapons and defenses. Commander Cho felt a weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "If this is true, then we've been making a terrible mistake. We might have just started humanity's first interstellar war through a misunderstanding." But So-min shook her head. "It's not angry at us," she said with certainty. "It's just confused. Like when you go to a new school and nobody speaks your language, so you can't ask where the bathroom is." Dr. Park Hyejin looked at her daughter with amazement. "How do you know all this, sweetheart?" So-min pointed to her drawing, which now showed the Annaconda surrounded by symbols that looked like a primitive writing system. "I listen to how it sounds when it makes noise. It's the same sound animals make when they're looking for their mommy or their babies." Dr. Kim analyzed the communication patterns more deeply. The calls seemed to follow a specific sequence, repeating every few minutes with slight variations. It was as if the Annaconda was broadcasting the same message over and over, hoping for a response that never came. "What if it's calling for its family?" he said. "What if it's the last survivor of its species, and it's been calling out across the planet, looking for others like itself?" The room fell silent as the full tragedy of the situation became clear. They were not facing a monster or a predator. They were facing a creature that might be the loneliest being in the universe. Lee Dongwoo checked his security monitors. The Annaconda had stopped its aggressive assault on the station. Instead, it was circling the building slowly, its massive head raised toward the sky as it continued its mournful calls. "Look at this," he said, showing the others the security feed. "It's not trying to break in anymore. It's just waiting." So-min walked over to the small window in the safe room wall. The reinforced glass was thick, but she pressed her face against it, trying to see the creature outside. After a moment, she turned back to the adults with tears in her eyes. "It knows its family is gone," she said softly. "It's been calling and calling, but nobody answers. That's why it came to us. We're the only other talking animals it could find." Dr. Park Hyejin knelt down beside her daughter. "What do you think we should do?" So-min picked up her drawing and held it against the window. The colorful picture showed the Annaconda surrounded by friends, no longer alone, no longer sad. "We should try to talk back," she said. "Even if we can't bring its family back, maybe we can be its friends instead." The adults looked at each other, realizing that an 8-year-old child had just proposed the most important diplomatic mission in human history. The question was whether they had the courage to try, and whether they could find a way to communicate across the vast gulf that separated human understanding from alien grief. Outside, the Annaconda continued its patient vigil, calling out to a universe that had never answered back. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stared at the communication equipment with the weight of history on his shoulders. Everything they had learned pointed to one incredible truth. The Annaconda was not a monster, but a grieving survivor trying desperately to find others of its kind. The question now was whether humans could bridge the gap between species and offer comfort to the loneliest creature in the galaxy. Commander Cho Sung-min made the hardest decision of his career. Lower the defensive barriers, he ordered Lee. Dongwu. If we're going to try to communicate, we need to show trust. Lee hesitated at the controls. Sir, if we're wrong about this, everyone dies. If we're right, Commander Cho replied, we might save the last member of an intelligent alien race. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most important discoveries. Dr. Park Hye-jin worked frantically with the station's communication array, trying to modify their equipment to match the frequency patterns of the Anaconda's calls. The creature's language was unlike anything in their databases, but Somin's insights about its emotional content gave them a starting point. Somin stood beside her mother, holding her crayon drawing carefully in both hands. The picture had become more detailed throughout their ordeal, showing not just the anaconda and its lost family, but also small human figures standing peacefully nearby. Are you ready, sweetheart? Dr. Park Hye-jin asked her daughter. This is going to be scary. Somin nodded seriously. It's okay, Mommy. Scary things aren't always bad things. Sometimes they're just different things that we don't understand yet. The security barriers powered down with a series of mechanical clicks and hums. Through the station's main viewport, they could see the Anaconda's massive form coiled around the building. Its enormous head turned toward the sound of the opening barriers, those dinner plate-sized eyes focusing on the transparent aluminum window. Dr. Kim activated the external speakers, broadcasting the recorded calls they had captured from the creature. The Anaconda's head snapped up at the sound of its own voice played back to it. For the first time since the encounter began, the great serpent went completely still. Then, slowly, the creature began to respond. Its calls grew softer, more questioning. Instead of the loud, desperate cries they had heard before, these sounds were almost whisper-quiet, as if the Anaconda was afraid to hope that someone might finally be answering. Somin pressed her drawing against the viewport window. The colorful artwork looked tiny against the massive scale of the alien creature, but the Anaconda's attention focused immediately on the simple crayon picture. Hello? Somin said simply, her small voice carrying through the external speakers. I made this picture for you. The effect was immediate and startling. The Anaconda's scales began to change color, shifting from their metallic black to softer hues that matched the colors in Somin's drawing. Blue patches appeared along its sides, then green, then yellow. The creature was trying to copy the artwork, using its own body as a canvas. Dr. Kim watched in amazement as the most sophisticated first contact event in human history unfolded through a child's innocent gesture. It's learning our visual language, he whispered. It's trying to communicate using the same symbols Somin used. The Anaconda moved closer to the window, its massive head now just meters away from where Somin stood. The little girl showed no fear as she looked directly into eyes that were larger than her entire body. You're sad because your family went away, Somin said gently, as if she were talking to a friend at school. But you don't have to be alone anymore. We can be your friends if you want. The creature's color changes became more complex, creating patterns across its scales that seemed to flow like living art. Dr. Park Hye-jin realized that the Anaconda was not just copying the drawing, but was creating its own response, its own attempt at artistic communication. Commander Cho activated the station's external cameras to record everything. Future generations would need to see how humanity's first diplomatic contact with an alien intelligence began with a child's crayon drawing and a creature's desperate loneliness. Somin pointed to different parts of her picture, explaining each element to the Anaconda as if she were giving a presentation. This is you, she said, indicating the large serpent in the center. And these were your family. I'm sorry they had to go away. The Anaconda's coloration shifted to darker blues and purples, colors that seemed to convey sadness even across the species barrier. But then Somin pointed to the small human figures she had drawn at the bottom of the picture. But look, she said brightly. Now you have new friends. We're different from your old family, but we can still care about you. The creature's colors began to brighten again, shifting toward the warmer yellows and greens that dominated Somin's artwork. Slowly, carefully, the Anaconda extended one massive coil toward the window. It touched the transparent surface gently, directly opposite where Somin's small hand was pressed against the glass. Dr. Kim felt tears streaming down his face as he witnessed the moment when two completely different forms of life found a way to connect across the vast gulf of biology and evolution. The Annaconda was no longer the terrifying predator that had attacked their station. It was simply a lost soul that had finally found someone willing to listen. Over the following days, as word spread throughout the human colonies, scientists would call it the greatest discovery in human history. Linguists would spend years learning to communicate more fully with the Annaconda's complex language. Xenobiologists would study how the creature's color-changing abilities could be used for advanced communication. But in that moment, none of the science mattered. What mattered was that Somin had looked past fear and indifference to see the heart of another living being. Her simple act of kindness had prevented what could have been a tragic first-contact disaster and instead created the foundation for friendship between species. The Annaconda, no longer the last of its kind in terms of companionship, began to settle peacefully around the station. Its mournful calls changed to softer sounds that almost resembled contentment. It had found something it never expected to find again, a family that accepted it despite the vast differences between them. Somin pressed her face against the window and smiled up at the enormous creature that had become her friend. "See?" she said to the adults watching in amazement. All it needed was someone to understand. Dr. Park Hae-jin hugged her daughter tightly, realizing that humanity's greatest ambassador to the stars was an 8-year-old girl with a box of crayons and a heart big enough to embrace the universe. The age of human galactic diplomacy had begun not with treaties or technology, but with the simple wisdom that loneliness is a language every living thing understands, and compassion is the universal translator that makes all communication possible.